Jovan, boo-ha! Boo-ha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to episode 18 of Buha's Block. Today I will be doing a mailbag. I am recording this before Game 5 between the Lakers and the Nuggets. I am trying to keep most of the questions relatively evergreen, so not specific to Game 5 and the result tonight, but I will be touching on a couple of Game 5 questions, so if you're listening after Game 5, you can just skip to the rest of the questions, but most of my answers will apply regardless of the result tonight. Also, for those watching on YouTube, I am at a small desk right now in my hotel room, so it's a little bit more of an intimate setting, so you guys are getting me in all my glory. And with all that said, let's get into our mailbag. Quickly, if you are enjoying this episode or have enjoyed my previous work and you are watching on YouTube, please consider hitting that subscribe button. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please consider following and downloading. And as a reminder, for future mailbag episodes, if you want me to answer your questions on YouTube, you can just drop a comment with mailbag : and then your question. On Twitter, same thing. If I don't get to it, it's because my mentions are being flooded for some reason, but I try to keep track of that stuff. And this is my first time saying to do that on Twitter, so I will be on the lookout for that. But easiest way is probably on YouTube, just dropping a comment and saying mailbag question or mailbag. Okay, so mailbag question number 1 is from @PhillyP75. Is RP's seat getting warm? I was watching the show you were on with JT on Hoops Tonight, and the point of choosing basically THT over Alex C was something that slipped my mind. Anyway, love the pod and keep it up. Well, Philly P, I appreciate the question and I appreciate you enjoying the channel. To my knowledge, Rob is not on the hot seat. It is not getting warm. His job is safe. From my understanding, the Lakers still believe in the roster that they have. They believe that this group is more of the group that won the in-season tournament and was winning at a 50-plus win pace when relatively healthy this season, and a group that now should be in a 2-2 series with Denver. So if anything, I think if there are changes, it's going to potentially come at the coaching position and with the roster in terms of making tweaks and adjustments and additions. But again, they are confident in the roster that they built. They were very confident with it going into the season, and they feel like that has been justified with the results for the most part, outside of that 3-10 stretch after the in-season tournament and some of the injuries that they've had. So to answer your question, he's got a couple more years left, and I expect him to be with the organization through at least those 2 years, if not longer. Next question from @mbino. Love this channel and your work prior to starting this channel. What is the best case scenario in regards to DLo for the Lakers as opposed to most beneficial for DLo? Thank you, Mbino, for that. So with this question, we are looking at what is best for the Lakers and not what is best for DLo. I think what would be best for the Lakers is for DLo to opt in. And the reason is twofold. One, you're getting him at a reasonable price. I think there was a point a month ago, 2 months ago, where it looked like DLo was going to be commanding certainly at least a 25% raise, if not potentially more, depending on how competitive his market got. I think the one thing saving the Lakers right now is that there aren't a lot of teams with cap space. There aren't a lot of teams looking for an offensive combo guard. The list of suitors, just looking at the market, to me, would be the Orlando Magic and the San Antonio Spurs. Those are the only two teams that have the cap space and have a need at the lead guard spot. And even Orlando, like, they obviously have Markelle Fultz, Jalen Suggs, and Anthony Black, and like they have, and those aren't, like, DLo would be in competition with those guys, but DLo is just better than those guys. Like Suggs, obviously, I think Suggs and DLo is a really good combination, just in terms of a backcourt combo with Suggs and being one of the best perimeter defenders in the league, DLo doing his thing, and DLo and Paolo, like, imagine that pick and roll, and then just that 2-man game combination. So, like, I think Orlando is, if DLo does walk, Orlando seems to be the team that would make the most sense. It's a team I've heard mentioned in league circles, and it just depends on the rest of the free agency market, right? Like they would obviously prefer to get a Paul George. Klay Thompson is another name that has been linked to them. So there are, DLo I don't think is going to be their first choice, but I think he will be in the mix in terms of a player that is still young enough to grow with a lot of that core and just makes sense in Orlando. San Antonio is a little bit of a trickier one just because of their DLo does not scream San Antonio player, just given his personality and some of the criticisms of him in the past. But who knows? He's obviously matured, and they need a pick and roll partner with Victor Wembanyama, and I'm sure they'll be in the conversations for Trae Young or Darius Garland this summer. But DLo is going to be one of the top point guards/guards available in free agency if he opts out, and the Spurs could be in the mix if they so choose to. So I say all that to say, for the Lakers, I think the best option is for him to opt in, because you either are getting him at a discount compared to what you could have gotten at the peak of his value, or you can trade him and it's an expiring contract and that still has value for a team potentially looking to get off a bigger contract and shed some salary. He could be included in a deal for a star. He could be included in a deal for an upgrade in the starting lineup. So there are a lot of different options you have as the Lakers, because the thing is, if DLo walks, the Lakers don't have a way to replace him. And specifically, they don't have they're not getting that salary slot back in terms of 18 million, but you're also not finding a minimum point guard or even an exception point guard that's going to still have the same value as DLo. So I've been critical of DLo, and I have my concerns about him at the highest levels in terms of conference finals. I think the inconsistency is concerning. As I've talked about on Hoops Tonight with Jason Timpf, as the third or fourth guy, you don't necessarily need to have 25 points every night, right? That's just not realistic, and that's not going to happen. But you can't have an 0 for 7 and also not be playing defense, not be rebounding, or you can't have a 6 for 20 where you're shooting your team out of the game. I still don't know if you can really trust DLo as your third or fourth guy against Denver. I'm skeptical. I doubt it. And we'll see how he performs in Game 5. We'll see if the series continues, how he performs in Game 6 and or Game 7. But so far, it's been, in my opinion, concerning that he continues to be an every other game player in this series. And as I said after Game 3, he still found ways to be effective in the regular season on poor shooting nights with his assists. And he would still relatively try defensively, just given some of his physical limitations. And I did not feel like that was the case in Game 3. We'll see. You don't, obviously he's coming off Game 4 and he had a nice bounce back. He's bounced back twice in the series in Game 2 and Game 4. We'll see if he can keep that going in Game 5. But up to this point, I think having 2 solid games and 2 terrible games is not what you want from your starting point guard if you are a contender. And again, from a guy who's probably your third most important offensive player. So I think the Lakers probably are best moving on in terms of flipping him over the summer if he opts in. I do think the Lakers need to go in a different direction at some point. But the ideal thing, I think, for them would be him opting in and then you being able to flip that or just keep him at a discount. But re-signing him to a multi-year deal or him opting out, I think those would be less favorable outcomes for the Lakers. Third question here on YouTube from @DavidJames0. Given his lackluster performance in this series, should the Lakers look to package Rui in a trade this offseason? It's a good question, and it's a fair question. I think the problem is anytime you're looking to trade a guy after a bad playoff series, you are trading them at a low point. And as I have said on this show before, as I have written before, Rui has always been a divisive player dating back to his Washington days. I mean, look back and see some of the trade grades at the time that the Lakers made that trade with the Wizards. And there were plenty of smart, credible analysts who said that the Lakers lost that trade despite giving up Kendrick Nunn, who had given them absolutely zero and had been a terrible signing, and some second round picks. And I mean, that take has not aged well. I think Rui has obviously been well worth Kendrick Nunn and 3 second round picks. And in my opinion, he's exceeded expectations overall since becoming a Laker. But going back to last summer and conversations I had with people around the league outside of the Lakers, Rui was a very divisive player in terms of that contract. Some people thought $17 million a year annual value for Rui. He signed a 3-year, $51 million deal. That was just too high. and that Rui was more of like a mid-level-esque player, of more of like an $8 to $12 million player. And I think he's looked like that type of player at times this season. I look at more so the first half of the season when he was playing a smaller role. He was inconsistent. His role was inconsistent. I don't think the Lakers were optimizing him. But then I look at the guy who became the starter and the way that he fit in as the fifth option, and taking advantage of mismatches and rebounding the ball better and defending better, I thought, and just doing all the little things better through the course of the second half of the season. So I still think Rui is going to be a polarizing asset. Like, you're not building a trade package around Rui. I don't think he has that type of value. Now, could you aggregate him with DLo, or could you aggregate him with Austin, or maybe you aggregate all three of those guys for a star or for a higher level starter? And maybe it's DLo and Rui that gets you into the mid 30s ballpark, and you add in a pick or two, and now you can get a better third player, better fourth player. And maybe it's not quite a star level, because then you have to empty all the assets, most likely at least 2 picks, maybe 3, maybe some seconds, some swap. Like, it gets a little tricky if you're going for a star with those two. But if you're just going for, can we find a better guard to put next to Austin in the starting group, and maybe it's more of like a 3-and-D guard who's a high-level shooter and high-level defender, or maybe we can go get a wing that can start and complement next to LeBron and AD. Like, there's different ways that the Lakers can go about that, but I think the Lakers will reevaluate Rui's future, and there's still potentially 3 games left in this series, and then beyond if the Lakers can find a way to pull off the comeback. So Rui still has some opportunity to redeem himself. But I think the Lakers, if he has a bad game 5 and they lose, I'm sure that will factor into his future with the team. I just also think when you're trying to trade a guy after a bad series, other teams are aware of that, right? And they're going to look to get him on a discount, and it's not going to be trading him at his peak value or fair value. Really, you're trading him at a disadvantage. So that's my one concern with trying to trade Rui. But again, I view Rui more as salary filler than anything. It just has to be a team that's okay with paying him for 2 more years at about that 15 to 17 million range. And it's not a terrible contract by any means. I don't even think it's a bad contract by any means. But I do think, again, he is a polarizing player in the eyes of a lot of teams in terms of his value, and I don't think he's viewed as a positive asset. Let's just say that, if you're including him. So, and if anything, it's gotten worse with this series. Okay, now heading over to Twitter for mailbag questions. At the Hoops Loop, do you think Murray will play Game 5? Yes, it's the Lakers. It's the playoffs. He's gonna play. I'd be shocked if he doesn't play. If he doesn't play, not only do I think Denver loses this game, but at that point, I mean, of course, you could play in Game 6 and or Game 7, but at that point, there's some real concern, I think, on the Denver side. If Murray's out and you lose, and now it's going back to LA and it's a 2-game series with LA having all the momentum, I mean, we'll see. But even if he's hindered a bit, I just think Jamal is a gamer, and I think he's going to play. But it also, it's been the theme of the Lakers season is injured players, no matter what, always play against them. So, and who knows, maybe it helps them win Game 5, depending on if they could target him or he has another off-shooting performance. So I'd be very surprised if Jamal Murray does not play in Game 5. Next question from @LakerFan235. Is there a chance we come back 3-1 versus the best team in the league? So as I said, I am recording this before Game 5, so my answer here could make me look dumb and have some egg on my face. But I will say, yes, the Lakers have a chance to come back and win this series. I think there are several factors in their favor right now. I mean, obviously the momentum of finally clearing that mental hurdle of beating Denver, snapping the losing streak, and just knowing that this team is not infallible. You can beat this team. 2, Jamal Murray's injury and the uncertainty of his availability and just his subpar play for the most part in this series. Unclear if how much that's because of the calf, and how much of it's because it's the Lakers, and how much of it's just Jamal going through a bit of a slump. Like, I think all those factors apply to some extent, but Jamal has not been at the same level as Jokic, AD, and LeBron. I think he's been a distant fourth in this series, especially coming off his performance in Game 4. So that is another factor in LA's favor. And then I also look at LA leading for 70.8% of the series, and they don't have much to show for it because they're down 1-3 in the series, but they are a Jamal Murray game winner away from this potentially being a 2-2 series. And us having a different conversation right now of, like, if this was 2-2 and LA was coming back for Game 5 and we're talking about they've led 70.8% of the time, Jamal is injured, I think we're having a different conversation where even if they lost Game 5, there'd be a lot of confidence about them winning Game 6. And then Game 7, anything can happen. Game 7, LeBron, like, I think they at least have a puncher's chance to win on the road in that situation. Now they are in a situation where they cannot afford to lose Game 5. They cannot afford to lose any of the remaining games in this series. So is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? No. Would I pick it to happen? No. Really, as I said after Game 3, I thought this was going to be a 4 or 5 game series. It was just a matter of, does LA show fight in Game 4? I do think the way that LA won in Game 4 and just the totality of the series in terms of how much they've been up, it's hard to ignore that. And again, the Jamal factor now, like, there are several things going in the Lakers' favor in terms of a potential Game 5 victory and extending the series. I would not bet on it. History suggests that, I think there's 7.5-point underdogs entering this game. Typically, a team that goes up 3-0 wins in 4 or 5. Denver also has the recent history of the matchup on their side in terms of they've won now 11 of the past 12 against the Lakers. So there are certain things working against the Lakers in terms of history, and just sort of the way that these matchups have gone typically. But yes, there is a chance. Again, I'm saying it's more likely they probably lose at just 5 than anything, but they have a chance. It's obviously all on Game 5, but if they can get Game 5 and it goes back to LA for a Game 6, now all of a sudden all the pressure is shifted back to Denver, because you do not want to lose Game 6, put yourself in that position to potentially lose at home in a Game 7 and be the first team to blow a 3-0 lead. So the Lakers, of course, will have the same pressure of they don't want their season to end, but it's a little bit different in terms of blowing a 3-0 lead than trying to climb back from it. Lakers are expected to lose. They are the heavy underdogs. They were the heavy underdogs entering the series, and they're kind of playing with house money in terms of if they lose, they were expected to lose. But if they win, now all of a sudden their confidence is growing. The doubt is creeping in for Denver. So Game 5 really, to me, I don't want to say is the series, because Denver could easily win Game 6 in LA or Game 7 at home. But it is, to me, it makes things really interesting if the Lakers can find a way to pull off Game 5. Next question from @tent_training. What is your favorite ice cream flavor? So I'm trying to share a little bit more about me as we grow this show out, grow this channel out. So I will quickly tell you. So in general, I'm a big vanilla guy. Any type of ice cream or milkshake with a vanilla base, could be cookies and cream, cookie dough, cake batter, any variation of vanilla plus something else, I absolutely love. If we're talking just like the basic vanilla, chocolate, strawberry, I will always pick vanilla. I love cookies and cream milkshakes from Shake Shack, Jack in the Box. Any place that has a cookies and cream milkshake, I like, that is always my choice. But more specifically, I love Jenny's Ooey Gooey Butter Cake and Salt and Straw's Sea Salt with Caramel Ribbons. Those are my 2 favorite ice creams, Jenny's and Salt and Straw. There's several locations around LA. I know they're in other cities, so maybe if you're listening, you don't have them in your city or your country or wherever you are listening to this from. But if you come to LA, I definitely recommend Jenny's ice cream and Salt and Straw ice cream. Also, for those watching on YouTube, I did just get back from shoot around, so I had to split this video up. So there's a slight difference in terms of the lighting and the angle of which I'm at. I tried to keep it as close to continuous as possible, but if you notice that, you're not crazy. I did have to leave midway through the video, and now I'm back finishing this up. Next question from @Ronnie Charrier. If the Lakers lose this series, which of the following is more likely? A, Lakers trade a ton for a 3rd star. B, Lakers replace Ham. C, Lakers do neither. and LeBron leaves. If I had to pick one of these three options, I would go with B, Lakers replace Ham. Next question from the real Fabrice. If the Lakers and LeBron James come back and beat the Nuggets in 7, then proceed to win the NBA title, would that cement LeBron as the GOAT unanimously? How many years do you think LeBron has left? I don't think there's anything LeBron can do to be the GOAT unanimously. I think there are people in the MJ camp, and I think there are people in the LeBron camp, and maybe another title would swing some of the MJ people to the LeBron side, but I don't think, even if he ties him with 6 titles and won a couple more, there's still going to be the people that look at the finals record and say MJ was 6-0, and LeBron at that point would be 6-6. So I just don't think people are ever going to agree on the MJ versus LeBron debate. In my opinion, there's nothing LeBron can do, even if he gets to 7. That I think he'll if he won 3 more titles and let's say had a 3-peat to close out his career, that would swing a lot of people. But still, there would be some Jordan stands and holdouts and people who just look at the 6-0 record in the finals versus LeBron losing 6 times in the finals. I just don't think there will ever be a consensus opinion in terms of who is better between MJ and LeBron. Next question from @PC3Laker. What are our capabilities salary-wise if LeBron and DLo were to go to a different team? I'm going to pull up Spotrac. I don't know if it's Spotrac or Spotrac, whatever it is. And they have the maximum possible cap space for the Lakers this summer as about $30.7 million. The Lakers lost LeBron, who's making $51.4 million, and that would be him opting out and leaving. And if DLo opts out and leaves, that's $18.7 million. Christian Wood, Jackson Hayes, and Cam Reddish all opt out, decline their options. Lakers don't re-sign Max Christie. Then they'd have AD on the books for $43.2 million, Rui at $17 million, Austin at just under $13 million, Gabe Vincent at $11 million, Jared Vanderbilt at $10.7 million, Jalen Hood-Schifino at about $3.9 million, and Maxwell Lewis at about $1.9 million. So you add that all up, and it's about $100 million for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys. So the Lakers would have, I believe, 6 empty roster charges that would not include their first-round draft pick. So again, the Lakers would be at around $30 million in cap space, which is not replacing LeBron and DLo. And looking at this free agency list here, you're not getting Tyrese Maxey with that. You're not getting Paul George. You're not getting Siakam. OG Anunoby, maybe, but he's probably staying in New York. James Harden, DeRozan, Tobias Harris, Nick Claxton, Emmanuel Quickley, Malik Monk. You're really dropping off. So if DLo and LeBron walk, I think the Lakers are in a rebuild. And it becomes about, are we doing a soft rebuild where we are trying to get young talent and rebuild around AD? Or are we just tearing this whole thing down and now we try and trade Anthony Davis and just rebuild with some of the younger talent that they have and the draft capital? And so to put it as simply as I can, the Lakers are screwed from a competitive standpoint if LeBron and DLo walk and really have no means to replace either guy. I don't think they're finding a guy as good as DLo. Maybe a guy as good as DLo with a $30 million-ish that they spend on one player potentially, but certainly nowhere in the LeBron ballpark. Next question from @xverlix_. We always hear about your reporter side, but never your fan side. Who are your favorite players/team in the league? If you don't have an answer, who is your favorite player/players to watch? Also, out of all teams this year, who do you most not want to win the finals? That last question is easy for me. It's Boston. I think that one is self-explanatory. I did grow up a Lakers fan, but as a reporter and as someone covering the team, I try to be as objective as possible and stay just in the middle and remove any emotion or bias from the situation. So I wouldn't say I have a favorite team per se. It is better typically for me when the Lakers do well. It means I get to cover more games, get more exposure. More people are tuning in to my work. There's more attention on the Lakers, etc. So like from that perspective, things can be better for me if the Lakers do well. But I would say from a player perspective, I've always I grew up a LeBron fan. And that is something that I had to put aside as I started becoming an NBA reporter and started, covering him on a daily basis. But he's still one of my favorite players to watch. Nikola Jokic, I am half Serbian. If you can't tell by my name, Jovan and Buha are both Serbian names. So there's the Serbian side of it, but also I just love the way he plays. I think I'm drawn to players who are really good passers, and the hybrid passing scoring variety, like Luka Doncic is also one of my favorite players to watch. Victor Wembanyama, like anytime he was playing and I could watch him, I was glued to the screen. Anthony Edwards has taken a giant leap, both literally and figuratively this season. So those are some of the top names I would say. All time, my favorite player to watch was Shaq because I grew up a big kid. I grew up playing center, and I just love the physical dominance of dunking on people, putting them under the basket, and just playing with that level of force and strength and physicality. So loved Shaq. He is my all-time favorite player. But LeBron, this is a weird series for me because LeBron and Jokic that might be my top three all time in terms of my favorite players to watch. Shaq, LeBron, Jokic, and two of those guys are facing off right now. Two of those guys faced off last year in the playoffs. With both, I try to remove the bias and remain objective. But if you're just asking me who I enjoy watching and who I have been a fan of, putting on my NBA fan hat and taking off the reporter cap, then I would say LeBron and Jokic are probably my two favorite players to watch in the NBA. Okay, a couple more. One here from at Goncalo. Sorry, I'm trying not to butcher it. 63774448. Hey, Jovan from Portugal. If you were a GM, what changes would you make during the offseason to make this team better? Good question. It is tough to say without knowing what options there are for the Lakers, right? Like if you could go get Donovan Mitchell or a top 20 player, I think you do it. And I know big threes are a hot button issue right now with the way that the Phoenix Suns just flamed out. By the way, that is one of my worst basketball takes in a while. I was still high on the Phoenix Suns. I thought they were going to beat Minnesota. I was still holding stock in the Suns. I thought the offense would be at a different level. Given that they beat Minnesota 3-1 in the regular season, again, I thought they would win that series, and then they would play either the Nuggets or the Lakers, and I thought they would have at least a puncher's chance against either one of those teams. So completely wrong on Phoenix, and I think that is leaving a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths in terms of how you can build a big three in 2024. But it's one thing when your third guy is Bradley Beal and he has a no-show performance like he did in Game 4. And to me, even putting that aside, like Bradley Beal is, if we're ranking guys, like is he top 40? Is he even top 50? Like I think he's a borderline somewhere in that like 40 to 60 range. Whereas adding a Donovan Mitchell, a Kyrie Irving, a Trae Young, three names I've reported, three names I've heard linked to the Lakers in the last several months at various points. Like I think Donovan Mitchell is a top 20 guy or in that conversation. I think Trae is probably top 30 at worst, if not top 25. He's somewhere in that range as well. And again, this is all going off the top of my head. Kyrie, I think, is also in a similar range in that top 30 or top 25. So when you have like that caliber of third star, all three guys can shoot. In the case of Donovan and Kyrie, they have been able to shapeshift around lead ball handlers. With Donovan, it's been next to a Mike Conley, next to a Darius Garland. With Kyrie, it's obviously been next to LeBron, and then in Brooklyn with KD and James Harden, and then now in Dallas with Luka. So they have played with other stars and lead ball handlers. Trae, it's definitely a bigger adjustment if you were to be a Laker. But I think for any one of those three guys, you have to at least consider it. And then it comes down to, Are you giving up all 3 first-round picks? Are you giving up Austin Reeves? What else is in the trade? And then you have to make a difficult decision in terms of what are we willing to give up and what does the roster look like? Are you decimating your depth, or is there a way to get a 3rd star and keep some of the depth? Because if there's a scenario where you can get, maybe the Mavericks flame out and Kyrie's available, or Atlanta says we're rebuilding around DeJounte and Trey's available and the market for Trey is low, or the Cavs lose to the Magic and Donovan Mitchell demands a trade and the Lakers are like one of 2 or 3 teams he wants to go to, and the Lakers all of a sudden have some leverage. Like, there's a way to not give up all your draft assets or not give up Austin Reeves and get a 3rd star. I think the Lakers need to consider it. Now, if you have to give up all your assets and Austin Reeves, and I think that would likely be the case, then you have to look at the alternative, which is maybe making a smaller size move. Do you trade D'Lo? Do you trade Rui? Can you combine those 2? Can you get a better wing or a better backcourt mate alongside Austin? There are a lot of ways. Do you go for another big man that you can either start next to AD and LeBron, or just be a backup big that can play 20 to 25 minutes, take on a bigger role if AD gets injured or is in foul trouble or whatever, or even play next to AD off the bench and maybe you close some games with that type of player. So there's a lot of different ways the Lakers could go. It's tough to say what is the best path without knowing. And right now, a lot of people are debating, is it 3rd star? Is it going the depth route? To me, the one thing the Lakers need to do, whether it is going the 3-star route or whether it is improving the supporting cast, is like they need a better, to me, top 6, top 7. They probably need to upgrade the D'Lo and Rui spots. And that doesn't even necessarily mean trading those guys. Like, if there's a way to aggregate, additional salary, it could be Gabe, it could be Vando, but bringing in guys who either fit better than those guys, are better than those guys, or slide those guys down in the pecking order. If I'm the Lakers, I want to go into next season more confident in my top 7 in terms of how they match up against Denver, Boston, Minnesota, and OKC. If those teams continue to ascend, who knows? Like, there could be another team that the Knicks, if they get another star, they'll be in the mix, right? So I think the key is finding a way to make players like 3 through 7 better. And that does not necessarily mean trading Austin Reeves, D'Angelo Russell, or Rui Hachimura, but it is getting creative and finding ways to, I think, probably move on from at least one of those guys, if not a couple, and then getting a better 3-and-D wing or a better, more defensive-minded guard to put next to Austin, and or maybe it's promoting Gabe and re-signing Spencer and then trying to, again, get a better wing or a better backup center or center that can be a backup and also play next to AD. So there's different ways the Lakers could go about it. I just think they need to enter next season with a better top 7. I think all of a sudden that roster starts to make a lot more sense and puts the Lakers right there near the top of the West. And now you just got to stay healthy and you got to figure out, I think, the coaching situation, whether that's keeping Darvin Ham and upgrading the assistant coaching staff or moving on from him and then bringing in a new coach. Next one from @MarleyMars15. As of right now, do you believe LeBron and AD's jerseys will be in the rafters at Crypto? Yes, I do. I think both guys, LeBron was the best player on a Lakers championship team. There are other players with retired jerseys that only have one championship. AD was the second best player. And I just think the fact that AD's been there 5 years, LeBron has been there 6 years, seems like AD is going to end up playing at least 8 or 9 years as a Laker. LeBron could play 7, 8, 9 years as a Laker. That, I think the longevity of their Lakers tenure combined with the success of winning a championship. I think had they not won a championship, it'd be a different conversation right now. But LeBron won a championship as the best player on a Lakers team. AD was the second best player for some stretches of that 2020 playoff run. AD matched, if not surpassed, LeBron. I think it was at times more of like a 1A, 1B situation. So I think both guys should be up there. And ideally, they win another championship. That completely solidifies it. But I think the 2020 championship solidified it. And I'd be very surprised if both guys are not in the rafters one day. And last question from @TornBetweenCho. How would you integrate Vando into the rotation first game back? in parentheses, assuming he plays. As I mentioned earlier, I just got back from shoot around. So we saw Vando shooting corner threes. We didn't get to see much else, but he was in a practice jersey, practice gear. Really the first time, like we've seen him doing like dribbling stuff and defensive slides, but never actually wearing his practice jersey. And that is the distinction here. He was actually wearing a practice jersey, which I think is a positive sign. And there's been some steps in the right direction in terms of his conditioning. And as I had previously reported, he'd been ramping up his conditioning, and the next and final step had been contact. It appears he did that. It was a shoot around, so you're not necessarily going 100% doing 5-on-5 like a hard practice. And we didn't get to talk to Darvin Ham at shoot around. He has not spoken at shoot arounds in this series on the road. So pregame, game 5 will be our next chance. I think Vando will be cleared to play. Whether he ends up playing and how much he ends up playing. We spoke with Anthony Davis at shoot around, and he said he's not sure how much Vando could play if he ends up playing. So I think that's a sign that he'll likely be on a minutes restriction if he does play. Is that 12 minutes, 15 minutes, 18 minutes? It's typically in that range, especially based on when he returned earlier in the season. We also saw that Vando struggled to acclimate out of the gate, coming back from injury a couple times. So there are a lot of moving pieces. And for the Lakers, the margin for error right now is so slim of inserting a guy who is a minus shooter, who Denver has had success playing off the floor, and who's coming off a 2+ month absence is a risky proposition. I'm not saying they shouldn't do it. I think if Vando can go, he has the potential to defend MPJ, defend Jamal Murray if Jamal plays, and be a positive with his defense and his rebounding and his effort, his cutting, etc. It's just there is some risk involved. I think we'd be foolish to ignore the risk of Vando plays, he's out of rhythm, he doesn't look like himself, and he goes like 0 for 3 on corner threes, and the Lakers lose his minutes and are like -4 or -6 or whatever in his 12, 15 minutes. And it ends up being he was kind of harmful more so than helping. As far as how I would deploy him, I mean, I would try and play him as much as is reasonably possible. To me, that's probably 15 to 18 minutes. And I would take some of that from Rui, and I would take some of that from Torian. Take it certainly from the 3-guard lineups as well, whether that's Spencer or Austin at the 3. But I think it would be a combination of those 3 places, a little less Rui, a little less Torian, and a little less Spencer at the 3, and that comes out to about 15, 18 minutes. You adjust obviously based on the circumstances and the context of the situation, but I think that's how I would play it if I were the Lakers, and if he is cleared to play, I think that's how it's going to play out. But that will do it for today's episode. Again, I tried to make it relatively evergreen, so it's not entirely dependent on Game 5 and the results. If you have future mailbag questions for me, again, be sure to drop them in the YouTube comments or hit me on Twitter. I'll be checking for both. I got over 80 questions for this mailbag, so I'm sorry if I did not get to yours. I promise I will try in the future. I do try and mix it up in terms of whose questions I'm answering, and not to continue to answer the same people. So I hope you bear with me. But I will say, again, I am prioritizing YouTube comments in terms of questions. So if you ask it on YouTube, I will almost certainly respond. So I'll be back tonight, Monday night, after Game 5 with a post-game reaction. Lakers will either have forced a Game 6 going back to LA, or their season will be over. Either way, we will have a lot to talk about, and I will talk to you then.